Hey guys, it's Boozor here. This is my first live commentary video where I'm actually doing commentary on my content on YouTube. Usually I just edit down some stuff from my stream, but this time I just wanted to give a very personal shout out to all my supporters along the way who have helped and encouraged me make content and keep trying to entertain, I guess. I do this as a hobby, so please go easy on me. I hope you guys have fun with these videos and hopefully you guys find these informative. I do strictly play arena most of the time, so all my content is very arena focused. I find arena very fun, and that is the main format that I play in Hearthstone. So we are going to do a full review on 1/9 Karazhan, and we're going to start off with the neutral cards. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all feedback and comments. If you guys have any, please leave a comment below. If you like the video, please like it. If you like the channel, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, just let me know. Anyways, cheers guys, thank you, have a good one. So the first card we're going to talk about from the neutral slot is going to be Arcane Giant. So Arcane Giant's another one of the giants that require condition and that their mana cost gets reduced. It's still the same 8/8 stat line. 8/8s are good, they're big, they're threatening, they require some kind of removal, but I think Arcane Giant in Arena is actually not very good, because in Arena it's very hard to pick up spells and it's very hard to use all these spells quickly, generally. So Arcane Giant most likely won't get templed out very early in the game. It will probably see play in the late game, but I don't think at a very super reduced cost that we see from other giants. I would consider this card slightly worse than the Frost Giant, and the Frost Giant is a card that gets reduced based on the amount of hero power you use. At least using your hero power you can control it. This card you can't really control it. You might never even draw the spells in your deck. You might have no spells in your deck. So this thing could potentially be unplayable in your deck. So that is a bit unlikely, since you most likely have the coin sometimes, so that's one, and then one other spell, maybe a mechanical part that can reduce it. So it is probably playable, but because it is less consistent than Frost Giant, I would rate it slightly lower. And Frost Giant is already a below average card, so I put this at probably a 3 out of 10 in overall ratings. And it's an epic, which hurts other epics. So far epic is probably the worst rarity in Arena, because most cards in epic are really bad. So we put another bad card in the epic slot. Next card we want to talk about is Medivh. So this stud muffin, the owner of Karazhan Tower, he shows up as a 7/7 for 8, and he has a pretty cool weapon equipped battle cry. The weapon is basically like a weaker summoning stone. It's a 1/3 weapon. Whenever you cast a spell, you summon a minion of that mana cost on the board, and the weapon loses a durability. So basically, you can use that weapon 3 times to attack for 3 damage, or you can cast 3 spells and summon 3 random minions. The chances that Medivh will actually show up in a arena deck is very unlikely. Its 7/7 body is very good, so it's definitely good and playable in arena, but I wouldn't say it's a slam dunk. Just because it's the weapon, Atish, the Great Staff of the Guardian, requires you to have spells in your hand to utilize its ability. So if you ever use Summoning Stone in Arena, you know that it's probably a card that you play when your hand fills those conditions and has some spells. It's not easy, and it doesn't happen all the time. So I say Medivh is a better Summoning Stone, obviously, because the staff is a byproduct of his 7/7 body. At 8 mana it is a bit expensive, and 7/7 is a bit understated for an 8 mana card. So you really have to get some benefit from the weapon that is equipped for this to be actually above average. Is it above average? Sure. It could be. It could be game breaking, but as it is, because it requires those conditions, it's actually more of a late game value card, and it really requires you to have something. Like if you have 3 1-mana cards in your hand, like spells, and you're playing them just to get 1-mana random bodies out, it's probably not worth it. So I can see this card fitting in some arena decks. You could kind of maybe build around it a little bit. Maybe consider it. I would consider it around average, maybe like a 5 out of 10. I don't see it being overly powerful. It's just think about how often you lose to summoning stone effects. Probably not very often, but the 7/7 body is threatening, so maybe it'll see some play in arena. But I would give it a pretty average rating, just a 5. Next card we're going to see is the Curator. This card is pretty interesting since it can draw you up to 3 cards. It's a 7-mana 4/6 taunt, draw you a Beast, Dragon, and Murloc from your deck. So it can draw you up to 3 cards, 4/6 taunt for 7, which is pretty insane. The value-wise, it's very good if it draws you those 3 cards. The problem is having those 3 cards in your deck is no guarantee in Arena. As we know, our drafts are random. We don't know what we will get. However, I think this card is better than it looks, I think. The Beast, Dragon, Murloc tag is actually pretty common in Arena, because we're just picking random stuff. And there are some good cards from each tribal class that is usually picked quite often. So Beast, there's lots of Beasts that can be picked. Anything. There's lots, like Captured Germonger. Like these are just normal cards that we play, right? Like in Arena, Captured Germonger, Tomb Spider, Haunted Creeper. Those are all Beasts. Dragon would be like Fairy Dragon, Draconite Crusher, Azure Drake. Murloc, bit hard to pick up good ones, so we're probably gonna say Valfin Tidehunter is probably the only viable one that can be played across all classes. So even if it draws you 2, it's still a pretty good value card. The stats are underwhelming for its mana cost, but it's a late game card. I would prefer a legendary of this mana cost to do something more impactful, maybe change the game somehow, but draw card type of card can definitely help you push for more late game sustain. So you want to keep going in the game, you draw some cards, draw some minions. So this card definitely helps you with that. But I feel like it's at best an slightly above average card. At best, it's probably a 6. At worst, if it draws you no cards, it's probably like a 2. 4/6 taunt is still a decent sized taunt, but the mana cost is horrendous. It's 2 mana over. I think for this card to be good, it has to draw at least 2 cards. 1 card, it's still pretty bad or below average. At 2 cards, it's probably average to above average, and then 3 cards, it's very good. Yeah, we'll see. It really depends on your deck, and because it requires condition to be filled in Arena, it's very hard to evaluate these type of cards because we don't know what our deck looks like. So in the right deck, it can be excellent. In the wrong deck, it's basically poor. So next card is the Bookworm. 6 mana, 3/6 dragon. Battlecry. If you're holding a dragon, destroy an enemy with 3 or less. So basically, this is Stampede Kodo. Stampede Kodo is 5 mana, 3/5 beast, and it kills something 2 attack or less with no condition. So you're paying 1 more mana for 1 HP and having a very strict condition to kill a slightly more attack minion. It's obviously not as good, not even in the same ballpark as Stampede Kodo. Stampede Kodo is an excellent card. Its condition is relatively easy to fill. It's a beast. The stats are 3/5 for 5. It's not great, but it's not as bad as 3/6 for 6. Also, this condition of holding a dragon is actually not easy. So The effect is great. Destroy a minion with 3 attack or less. It's great. Water elementals. What else? Water elementals, fen creepers, unstable ghouls, stuff like that. Like this thing can kill, but the condition of having a dragon is really tough and very uncommon. Like if you think about like Blackwing Corruptor, its effect is basically you turn it into a cheaper, smaller fire elemental, but its effect, the condition of its effect is to hold a dragon. It's actually very hard. As it is, this card is not even playable for 6 mana. So if it doesn't have the battle cry, it's basically unplayable. 3/6 for 6, unplayable. If you're holding a dragon, it has a conditional battle cry. So what if your opponent doesn't have a 3 attack minion? It's basically unplayable. You don't get any value from it, right? So I would rate this card quite poor. It's probably one of the worst cards in this set, actually. It's not really a card. It's not really a dragon that the dragon tribes really need. Another 6 mana card, another big dragon, and another card that really just requires another condition to be met to be good. Most of the dragons, we just want dragons that are good by themselves. We don't want this holding dragon synergy stuff. But in Arena, it's very hard to get this kind of synergy, so we're going to rate this pretty poorly. It's probably going to come down to a 2, maybe even a 1. The difference between this and Blackwing Corruptor is that Blackwing Corruptor is at least a 5/4 body for 5 mana. This is a 3/6 body for 6. It's really bad. So I would try to stay away from this unless you have some insane dragon synergies or you're making a constructed ladder deck. The next card we see is probably this card, Prince Malchezaar. Insanely hyped ever since its release. Since its ability is very, very special. We've not seen anything like this ever in Hearthstone. When the game starts, add 5 extra legendary minions to your deck. How insane is that? Your deck gets 5 more legendaries. But wait, what if your deck is so perfectly crafted and it has a specific playstyle that 5 random cards, regardless of how good they are, get stuck in your deck and they really mess up your arena deck? So that is the question. How good is this card? The 5 random cards is hard to evaluate because we don't know what the hell they are. We know that on average legendary cards are expensive and they are good, impactful in ways. So if you have a very cheap deck that requires a strong curve, fast minions, and spells to finish off your opponent, this card will probably mess up your deck if you draw the extra legendaries. So this card will be rated lower in those type of decks, but you would have to make that kind of judgment call. In a long control value oriented deck with a lot of card draw, a lot of cycling, this card, maybe your deck will benefit from an extra Rag, an extra Yashira, an extra Kel'Thuzad, right? This card is going to be pretty good. You can draw into insane situational legendaries that are going to make your deck just that much heavier. But that's the game plan of your deck. So this card will gain value in those decks. So this card is a little bit hard to evaluate, but I would definitely consider that the 5 random cards that gets put in your deck will probably change the entire outlook of that deck. In most likely situations, it will be a heavier deck. So if you pick this first overall, you can probably give up some late game cards for early game cards later in your draft, because you can assume that the 5 extra cards being put in are probably really heavy and probably impactful. As a body, 5/6 for 5, very good stats. So it's definitely playable by itself, and the value it gives from the 5 extra cards is probably good in the long run, especially in Arena where we don't see a lot of these all-in face decks from turn 1. They're mostly control, mostly mid-range, fight for the board type stuff. So just be aware, although this card is incredibly hyped, and the 5 extra legendaries are nice, it does have some caution that we should be using to take it and rate it very highly. Personally, I think it's slightly above average. The effect is probably good on average, and its stat line is quite decent. Quite decent, I mean very good. So I'd probably give it a 7. A 7 out of 10 is quite above average. and yeah, it'll probably see play in Arena. So next card we're going to look at is Menagiri Magician. Sorry, I butchered that name. Battlecry, give a random friendly beast and Murloc +2/+2. 4/4 for 5 mana. Give a random friendly beast, dragon, and Murloc. So basically this can become like a cheaper Stormwind champion with the conditions of these tags. It is understated. It's a 4/4 for 5, which is generally pretty bad. Its Battlecry, it probably needs to go off at least once. At least once. So it has to land on at least one of these minions to make it viable. Because basically you're getting 6/6 stats for 5 spread over 2 bodies, which is okay. It's kind of like Silverhand Knight, but this requires a condition. And the potential upside of it is that you land on all 3 and you get 10/10 worth of stats for 5 mana, which is really good. So I think this card, it's common. We might see it. It's probably like a Abyssinal Sentinel type card, the Death Rattle +3/+3 type card. Like, it's situational. It might be, we might see play. I'd consider it below average. I'm not going to take this card very highly, but it could be good in a pinch. If this was 5/5 or 4/5, it might be a bit better. It would be a bit better, but 4/4 for 5 is a pretty bad stat line. Most things would die pretty easily at 5 mana stage as a 4/4. So I would probably rate this probably like a 3 out of 10. I could see you picking it in Arena just because, yeah, why not? If it lands once, it's kind of like a more expensive Shattered Sun Clerk, which is not too bad because Shattered Sun Clerk's insane. So this card's not too bad. It's probably a 3 out of 10, but I could see it getting picked. It just needs the condition to go off once. So next card, Avian Watcher. So 3/6 for 5. Pretty bad stat line. Battlecry, if you control a secret, gain +1/+1 and taunt. Okay, so the +1/+1 and taunt makes it a 4/7 taunt for 5, which is insane. The gold standard for a taunt on turn 5 is probably Druid of the Claw, which is a 4/6 taunt, very decent stats and taunt. So this being a 4/7 taunt for 5 is even better than Druid of the Claw, but it requires this ridiculous condition to be met. If you control a secret, you gain this buff. But the idea of having a secret before turn 5 is pretty bad, so playing this card on curve is probably not going to happen very likely. Also, this card basically only works in some classes. So if you get this as an option as a rogue, like, you just lost an option. It's lost an option. So I don't really like these type of cards where they're pigeonholed into certain classes only. So the condition to hold a secret is actually not that easy. So most likely it's going to be a 3/6 for 5. It's on the level. It's like the same stat line as Spellbreaker. Sorry, no, not Spellbreaker. That other guy. The 3/6 for 5 that swaps its stats. Anyways, sorry, I forgot the name, but yeah, so it's on the same level, but it's actually worse because the condition is hard to meet. This card's probably not going to see too much play, but as a 3/6 body for 5, I guess you can probably justify taking it over some other really bad rares. So the stats are not super unplayable by itself. They are pretty bad, but in a really dire situation, you could take this card. It's definitely below average for me. If you control a secret, it's a pretty tough condition to meet. Generally, secret drafting in Arena is probably not the best. There's only certain secrets that are actually really good anyways. So I'd probably rate this a 3. It's probably on the same level as this card, the Magician. So situational card. It's a rare. We might not see it very often. But yeah, it's probably like a 3 out of 10. So the next card we're going at is Molt Lurker. This card is very interesting. I think this card is going to have insane impact on just the way how every class is able to deal with a creature. Molt Lurker basically gives every class a neutral hard removal. This has a targetable hard remove on any minion. It's not enemy minion, it's not friendly minion, it's any minion. So you could find some pretty insane synergies with this Molt Lurker, such as Battle Cry, I kill my Sylvanas and I take your guy. Death Rattle, this thing dies, Sylvanas comes back. It's definitely a pretty interesting card. It most likely will not be used that way. It will probably be used to kill your opponent's big minion, and most likely you'll probably try to negate its death rattle by killing the opponent before they can kill this. This is a bit expensive, I think. 6 mana for 3/3, so you're basically paying 6 to kill a minion, which is like worse than assassinate. But you also develop a 3/3 body, which probably can absorb, you know, a small minion. But the death rattle, when this dies, it just brings back the minion. So you kind of have to look at this as maybe like a sap, maybe like a kidnapper type card. Destroying a minion probably is not as good as shooting it back to their hand, just because the death rattle resummons them for free. So it's probably worse than Kidnapper without the condition. But it's also a neutral card. That's the thing. It's a freaking neutral card. I think this card has huge arena impact. It gives every class a way to destroy minions, like Druid, like classes that have problems dealing with large single target minions, like Druid, Warlock, what else? Druid, Warlock, Paladin, even like cards that can't deal, like classes that can't deal with large minions. This card is going to change the way that we draft. It's probably in the same impactfulness as Corrupted Seer, the first neutral AoE card. So I would compare this card and that card, and we definitely see play from Corrupted Seer. It's probably definitely above average card because some classes don't even have AoE, and maybe your deck doesn't have AoE, even if your class has AoE. So this card, if your class and deck do not have a hard removal, this thing is premium. So I would definitely rate this above average, just with its effect that it can kill anything. Doesn't even matter if it brings it back. You can kill anything, kill that bog creeper, you go face, you win the game, etc. Right? So I definitely rate this above average. Its drawback is pretty bad. It's pretty expensive, so I am hesitant to give it a 10, but it is probably a 7 at least. I think this card will do crazy things. The next card in our selection is Arcano Smith. So 4 mana, 3/2, Battlecry, summon an 0/5 minion with taunt. So you're basically getting 3/7 worth of stats for 4 mana, which is pretty good. The problem is the 3/2 body and the 0/2, 0/5 body basically is definitely below average. So most what will happen is that this 0/5 taunt will absorb a hit, allowing you to set up future minions for future plays. This 3/2 most likely won't kill anything that can kill this 0/5 easily. So a singular minion it probably cannot kill, but it will give you time to develop behind the taunt, hopefully, and it spreads out a lot of stats over 2 bodies. So it, you know, if the person has a spell to remove the taunt and then now they have to deal with the 3/2 body, it does make it a little bit awkward. I would say this card is slightly average. It's actually okay. In some classes it's better because there's taunt, there's spell synergy, you can buff synergies, you know, minion synergies like Direwolf, stuff like that, where they actually benefit from 2 bodies. I wouldn't take this too highly, but I would say as a 4-drop it is probably okay, probably okay-ish. It's more okay if you're ahead, less okay if you're behind, I think. But I would give it probably a 4.5 out of 10, maybe a 5 as an average card. We'll probably be seeing it pretty often, so get ready for some 05 taunts, just to annoy you guys. Next card is Barnes. Pretty cool. This legendary is very, very cool. In worst case scenario, it's a 3/4 for 4 plus a 1/1. So you basically get 2 bodies for 4, and you get the stat total of a Yeti. That's generally not as good as a singular Yeti, I think. But the upside of this 1/1 copy is pretty strong. I think it's much stronger in constructed play than arena play, since we can't really control how we draft. So the 1/1 can be basically a 1/1, 1/1 chill win Yeti. So basically vanilla, do nothing. Or it can be a 1/1 Ragnaros, and then you start firing 8 damage fireballs everywhere. So we don't know. It could be a 1 mana, or it could be a 1/1 Kel'Thuzad, and you win the game. So on turn 4. We really don't know. This card is probably average, just because it lacks the consistency of some other stronger legendaries. So I'll probably give it a 5. It's definitely interesting. We're probably gonna see this in constructed play. People are probably looking for some crazy synergies. Obviously, if your deck has a lot of Death Rattle minions, this thing gets a lot of value. If it has a lot of buff minions, like maybe a Stormwind Champion, it brings out all your minions get +1/+1. Just stuff like that. This card will be interesting. Worst case scenario is just a split up Chillwind Yeti, which isn't too bad. So Barnes, we'll probably see you again. I give it a 5 with the potential to be outstanding. So it definitely has potential, but as is, with the lack of consistency, it's probably a 5 or a 6 in my opinion. So the next card is Moros. This card is pretty bad. It's probably worse than Imp Master. Yeah, this guy's pretty bad. The stealth, there's a lot of AoE that can actually kill this. Random effects like Mad Bomber, Found Knives, Consecration. A lot of the normal, regular ones. This thing even dies to like Stampede Kodo, Flame Cannon, Arcane Missiles, all sorts of stuff. Over the long run, yes, you get a lot of value, infinite value, pretty much. But consider this basically like the Imp Master. Imp Master starts off with 5 health. You can draw 5 tokens from it. How often does the Imp Master go down to 5, go down to 0, without your opponent doing anything about it? Probably not very often. So for Morals to get that level of value, it'd have to be alive for a long time, and even then, something like Dreadsteed is even better than this. So it's hard to say. I'd definitely give this below average. The impact of this card is very small. It's probably a 3, maybe even a 2. Yeah, I'd definitely. It does have some synergies in Paladin or in flood type decks, but yeah, generally I don't consider this card very strong. So sorry, another weak legendary, I guess. But yeah. Pantry Spider, how cute. Unfortunately, it's pretty freaking bad. So basically, you get 2 6 of stats, 2 6 worth of stats over 2 bodies for 3 mana. The problem is the 1/3 stat line is really bad. It can't. Yeah, it's really bad. The 1/3 stat line is pretty bad. Basically, this is like. Yeah, I would consider this below average. Definitely below average, just because the 1 attack on turn 3 is basically irrelevant most of the time. So I would give this probably a 3. Is not that great. We're looking for some kind of synergies with it, like Dark Iron Dwarf or Shattered Sun Clerk, just to buff it up to make it useful. But right now, I don't see it being overly used and overly good. It's probably it's worse than Harvest Golem for sure. Even though you get the immediate body right away, it's probably on the same level as Echoing Ooze. Echoing Ooze is probably even better, just because the 1 attack on turn 2 is more relevant than 1 attack on turn 3. So I'd be cautious taking this card too often and too many of them. So Pompous Thespian, 3/2 taunt for 2. I guess it does protect you. It does give you initiative because you can play behind this afterwards. But I'd consider this worse than the Twisted Worgen 3/1 stealth for 2 mana, because the stealth minion you can at least dictate your own trades. This I would consider this quite below average. It's common card, so we'll probably see it quite often. I'd probably give it. It's better than some of the generic 3/2 cards out there, like the Murlocs, the 3/2 Murloc, and the Bloodfin Raptor. Those cards are probably like just slightly below average. So I'm hesitant to say that this card is average, but it's probably around a 4 or 5. So I'd probably give it that. It's nothing really too special, but yeah. Nether Spite Historian, 1/3 for 2. I guess the stat line is okay. It's not really. The Battle Cry, if you're holding a dragon, discover a dragon. So another dragon synergy card. The problem with this card is, again, you have to hold a dragon, and you only discover a dragon, which could or could not be good. There are some very high value dragons, but they're very late game, very slow, and some are very situational. The condition to meet is holding a dragon. This is going to be tough, especially in the early game. Because of this very hard condition, it's probably not going to see much play. And I rate this below average. Maybe in Constructed it might see some play. Zubat, man, or more cute portraits. Pretty cool. It's a 3/3 for 3, so it's always okay. Decent. It's okay stat line, so it's playable. Battlecry, give a random friendly dragon and Murloc +1/+1. So the condition to meet this, actually, it's alright. It's not great. If you play this on curve, there's not many curve beast dragon Murlocs that you could have. You could have Fairy Dragon, Tidefin Hunter. You could have random whatever beast, huge toad. In that case, this card's really good. It's a better shot at Sun Clerk. But as is, it's probably average to above average, very slightly, just because 3/3 stat line is always playable. So it's probably a 5 or a 6. I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10, just for the potential for some really crazy stuff. So it's decent. It's a decent card. Yeah, probably see it picked. So Violet Illusionist, 4/3 stat line for 3. It's very reasonable stat line. During your turn, your hero is immune. There's probably some crazy synergies with this card. This card's ability. So it's only your turn. So things that hurt you, like Warlock's tap. So Warlock's tap, like bomber effects hitting your face, things like that. So you're immune to on your turn. It's probably not going to be too beneficial, unless I could see this being beneficial if you're playing like a weapon class. You play this, use your weapon, you're immune because it's your turn. So this card's probably going to be pretty good. Has a good stat line, so I'd say it's probably a 6, at least a 6. 4/3 trades into almost all 3 drops, so at the very least it'll trade into something. So, and the effect that you play this on the turn that you have a weapon, you go face, you kill a minion, and you don't take any damage. So it has definitely some upside with no real downside. At least a 6 for me. Next card, Arcane Anomaly, basically a worse Mana Worm. Mana Worm starts off as a 1/3 with the same ability except for damage, so 3 health. So this card needs 2 spells to get up to roughly actually it needs 2 spells to be worse than a Mana Worm, because if a Mana Worm eats 2 spells, it would be a 3/3. This card would be a 2/3. So there's a neutral Mana Worm that's not as good. I mean, as a 2-drop it's okay. I mean, as a 1-drop it's okay. It's 2/1. It can kill whatever, some 2-drops. So it's okay. It's probably below average. I'll probably give it a 4 or 3. Its effect probably won't go up too often unless you have the coin or you're playing mage. But this is strictly a worse Mana Worm. I give it a 4. It's below average for me. Runic Egg, pretty boring card. 0/2 stats for 1 death without draw a card. Generally, if you pay 2 mana to cycle a card, generally in this game you play 2 mana to cycle a card. But it also usually has an effect. So right here, the effect is having a 0/2 body. So some classes can make more use of this. So you play this on turn 1, maybe on turn 2 you have Abusive Sergeant or Direwolf. You buff it up, you trade into something. That's great. The other play would be like you use this, use some kind of buff, like a minion buff, like Shadow, like sorry, Blessing of Kings on it, and then it becomes a huge threat with Death Rattle, draw a card. But I think this card's gonna be pretty bad. It's probably worse than Dragon Egg, and Dragon Egg can get some value in certain classes. I think this card's probably pretty bad because you're spending a card to play this O2. If you can't use the O2 body, your opponent kills it and you just get a card, so you just waste the mana, right? This card's probably pretty bad. I would probably give it a 2 out of 10. Alright, so that's all our neutral cards. So we'll probably be seeing a lot of these cards in the future just because they're neutral, and but most of them are not very good. If we go through them again, most of them are not very good. Legendaries we don't really count. Like I said, this card will probably be very impactful in the arena meta. Pretty happy to see this. Yeah, the rest of the cards are okay to bad. This card is okay. Could be potentially very good. Let's see here. So we're going to go on to the class cards here. It'd be much quicker. So first class is Druid. We're going to see some Druid. Druid got a lot of love this expansion. Lots and lots of love. Moonglade Portals, first card for Druid. One of 4 portal spells. So this one is probably the second best portal that was offered. It's very reasonable. You pay 6 mana, you gain 6 health. You can actually target the 6 health, so it's actually better than like Guardian of Kings, for example, where you only restricted to healing your face. And you summon a random 6-cost minion. 6-cost minions are great. You can have some epic, awesome 6-cost minions that pop up. Cards that come to mind: Sylvanas, Carnate Bloodhoof. What else? You can get ogres, 6/7 ogres. Just insane 6 mana cards. You can get like Illidan. Yeah, just great. And you get the 6 health on top. So basically, I think if you get on average a 5/5 and you get the 6 health for 6 mana, I think that's very reasonable. That makes it a very average card with a huge upside of getting something insane. The problem with the 6 health is usually it's not too impactful, regardless of where you target it. So this card is probably not a home run, but it's definitely above average. The worst 6-cost card you can get is Corrupted Seer, and that's a 2/3. So you're paying 6 mana for a 2/3, gain 6 health, and that's horrible. But there's only really that one that stands out to me. There's one charger, Reckless Rocketeer, so it can charge for 5 damage. And in general, there's actually pretty good cards. Like, we can go over some of the 6 mana cards here. Let's see. So Savannah Highmane, insane. Like 5/5 Faceless Summoner, Mysterious Challenger. You can get Temple Enforcer, 6/6 Kidnapper, 5/3 is pretty bad. 5/5, 6/5s. We're just looking at stats here: 5/4, 6/6, 6/7s. A lot of really nice. Like, most of them are really good. 4/4 is kind of weak, but yeah. So this is, I would say, an above average portal. It's probably a 7. It's probably gonna get picked very often. It's a rare. All right, and then now we're heading on to the Menagiri Warden. This card is absolutely insane. 6 mana, 5/5 Battlecry. Choose a friendly beast and summon a copy of it. That's insane, since there's really a lot of good beasts that this can target. And just the insane amount of tempo and stats that this card can bring out on turn 6 makes this card ridiculous. Even if it hits on like a 2 mana card, you already get really good value on it. So you hit it on, like, I don't know, like even like a raptor. You can hit it on a mounted raptor. That's really good value. This is basically Druid's version of Faceless Summoner with the condition, but there's also insane upside for it. This card is just insane. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. It's almost an auto pick for Druid. Druid definitely needs a card like this, so I'm happy to see it for Druid. Next card, Enchanted Raven. Pretty standard card. I mean, doesn't have anything too exciting, but it is a 2/2 for 1. It's the first of its kind, and it's a beast. This card has some insane potential because it basically comes down on turn 1, and on turn 2, if you can buff it and benefit from the beast synergy, like Market Your Charge, this card is freaking ridiculous. As it stands, it's probably on the same level as Worgen Infiltrator. This card can't be pinged down, much like Worgen Infiltrator, and it has a beast tag. So, but most likely it's going to trade into a 3/2 for on turn 2. So most is probably on the same level as that, but I'd probably value the beast tag a bit more than the Worgen Stealth. So I'll probably give this probably a 6 or a 7. It's definitely above average card. I wouldn't take too many of them just because they're 1-drops, but definitely would highly rate this card. All 3 of the Druid cards are very good, and it's definitely going to help Druid in the arena meta. Alright, so the next class we're going to look at is Hunter. This is one of the most insane cards that Hunter could possibly get, but I don't think it's enough to help Hunter become good. 3/4 stats for 3, very good, very respectable. Ability, insane. All your secrets cost 0. No conditions. All your secrets cost 0. You can basically play your entire hand of secrets if you have them right away. This is ridiculous. The problem is having secrets in your opening hand with this card is probably not that great because secrets can't really win you the game, can't do 30 damage, so you don't want to draft too many of them. But secrets are very good when they cost nothing. It's hard to say. Even if you don't have a secret, it's a 3/4 for 3, very strong. And we all know Hunter has some of the best secrets in the game. So we'll have to see how this card does. But right now, it's definitely above average. It's probably a 7 out of 10 for me. I would rate this probably higher than most 3-drops available. I don't know if it's going to help Hunter, but it's definitely very, very strong. So the next card is Cat Trick. So after your opponent casts a spell, summon a 4/2 Panther. So basically gives you a Jungle Panther for 2 mana with the stipulation that they need to cast a spell. It's probably pretty good against when you're going first and they still have the coin, so you're automatically going to get the Panther at some point. But there's no guarantee that's going to come out. You don't know when it's going to come out. So it's really hard to say, but it's probably pretty good. It's good value. It's another secret. So far, all Hunter secrets are very good, and this is another good secret. So probably 5 or 6. It's slightly above average, just because you get good value from the Panther, since the Panther usually costs 3 mana. So, but because it's a controllable secret by your opponent, it's not as good as it should be. And only a 4/2 Stealth Panther. It's not as impactful as it should be. Not as impactful as like Freeze and Trap, for example. Kindly Grandmother. This card's been getting a lot of hype too. I think it's alright. It's basically a reverse Haunted Creeper, but not as good. Basically getting 4/3 worth of stats over 2 bodies. So the first body generally will die to maybe a ping or a dagger. And then you're left with a 3/2 body. So it's actually not too bad. At the very least, it'll take some damage, take something to deal with it. You could buff the 1/1, trade into something, and pop out the 3/2. Yeah, I think it's good. It's a good 2-drop. I wouldn't say it's ridiculous, but it's good. I give it a 6. And as far as 2-drops go, 6 is pretty strong. I'm not sure if I would pick King's Elic over this card. I like this card. Yeah, it's good. So next class we're going to talk about is Mage, the hot topic, hot class of this expansion for sure. They get a portal called Firelands Portal, deal 5 damage, summon a random 5, cost minion. Insane. This card is absolutely insane. It's been hailed as the card that will break Arena and give Mage the overpowering throne to Arena. 5 damage for 7, not super crazy, but when you attach it to a body, it's pretty freaking good. 5 cost minion. Generally, you're going to get about 4 or 5 worth of stats on average. There are some insane outcomes. Earth Elemental being one. 7/8 taunt. You could even go face with Leroy Jenkins. Leroy Jenkins pops out. You hit him in the face for 5. Leroy Jenkins hit him in the face for 6. That's 11. Or another good outcome would be Doomguard. 5/7 charge. So those are insane. The worst outcome is a 3/2 Buzzard, or like Stormpike Commando, something like that. Generally, yeah, if you get those outcomes, it's pretty bad. There are a couple of them, but I think on average, this card is just insane. Alright, very respectable 2/3 stats for 2, Medivh's Valet. Its Battle Cry is pretty insane, but the condition to meet the Battle Cry is hard. Having a secret, it's not easy, but I guess you can play this in the late game. or you can play this right after playing a secret to deal 3 damage. So it basically attaches a spell to a very respectable card if you control secret. So it's a bit situational, but I could see this thing changing the game pretty fast. Again, solid body for 2, so if you just play it on turn 2, it's perfectly fine. Another strong card for Mage, so yeah, I would give this at least a 6 out of 10 as well. It's very good 2-drop with a huge upside, even though the condition is hard to meet. Last card for Mage, Babbling Book. Another really insane card for Mage. It's not as insane as some other cards. Like I'm not going to take this card over Azure Drake, for example, in the rare slot, or Sludge Belcher, but this is a really good card. You pay 1 to get a random spell. So we know spells are getting harder and harder to get in Arena, so that's good, random spell. Cabala's Tomb, considered an average, above average card. You get 3 random spells for 5 mana. So this card, you get a random spell for 1 mana, and you get a 1/1. It's not as high value though as Cabala's Tomb, since Cabala's Tomb gives you 3 cards for 1, but this card is still pretty good. I'd give it at least a 6. It's definitely above average card. So Mage gets better with some really good cards. It's kind of scary actually. So we go to Paladin. This card, Ivory Knight, it's okay, it has potential. Discover is obviously a very strong mechanic, and discovering a spell, although I think Paladin spells in general are not as good as like Mage spells. I would put Ivory Knight worse than Conjurer for sure. The heal is probably not super impactful most of the time, and it also gives away the strength of your spell to your opponent. They can pretty much narrow down what kind of spell you have based on the amount of heal that you get. 4/4 stats really bad for 6 mana. But yeah, it's probably an average card. I would give it an average card just because Discover a spell is very good. So I'd probably give it a 5. It might see some play, we might see it here and there. There are some worse outcomes than this, so yeah, should be okay. Silver Moon Portal, 4 mana, give a minion +2/+2, summon a random 2-cost minion. I think this card's pretty bad. The stats and the mana are about right, but I think for this type of card where it summons the randomness of a minion, it needs to be, I think, slightly undercosted to be very good. I think this card has the potential to be as good as, you know, the best case scenario is you get Millhouse Manstorm, you get a 4/4 minion, and you get a +2/+2 buff. So best case scenario, you get a 4/4 and it gives a buff to another minion for +2/+2. Worst case scenario, you get a 1/1. So 4 mana, you pay a 1/1, you get a +2/+2 buff. So much worse than Blessing of Kings, obviously. But it is decent value. It's basically putting 2 cards into 1. You get a buff and a minion into 1 card, so it is decent value. I wouldn't consider it horrible, but it's definitely not on the same power level as Firelands Portal, for example. It's definitely not on that power level. I'll give it an average rating. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Could see some play. Nightbane Templar. I really like the art on this. She looks pretty cool. 3 mana, 2/3, battlecry. If you're holding a dragon, summon 2 1/1s. Okay, another dragon synergy card. I really don't like this because it really hurts just the overall strength of the individual card if you don't have a dragon. So if you don't have a dragon, this card is pretty bad. It's 2/3 for 3. If you hold a dragon, it's a 2/3 for 3, and you summon 2 1/1s. So it's basically a 4/5 or 4/5 worth of stats over 3 bodies. It's slightly better than Razorfin Hunter if you have the condition met, which is actually not that easy to hit. So it is probably worse than Razorfin Hunter. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Razorfin Hunter. So that sucks. It's a common card. Paladin will see it. Paladin's probably not gonna like it. Paladin's not getting a lot of love this expansion. So they're probably gonna slip down a little bit. Okay, we're on to Priest. Poor Priest. Did they get any help this expansion? First card we see is Onyx Bishop, 5 mana, 3/4 battlecry, summoning a friendly minion that died this game. So it's basically a 3/4 body that is attached to Resurrect. So it's decent value. It brings you 2 mana. It brings you 2 minions for 1 card. It's decent. The battle cry can be pretty game changing depending on what it brings out. So I would say this is probably above average for Priest. The condition that something has died this game is probably easily met. It's easily met because this is a late game, like mid game card, so it's easily met. It's just the randomness of it, right? So worst case scenario, you get a 1/1, for example. Let's say you get a Novice Inventor back. So that's 4/5 worth of stats for 5 mana over 2 bodies. It's pretty bad. Best case scenario, you get I don't know, you get a Kraken back. So this card's probably pretty good. I'd say it's probably above average. Maybe it'll help Priest, but maybe not. It does help them a little bit, I think. I'd give this a 6. I'd probably rate this pretty highly for Priest. So if you get him and you're playing Priest, definitely take this card, I think. Next card, Priest of the Feast. 4 mana, 3/6. That's a good stat line for 4 mana usually. Whenever you cast a spell, restore 3 health to your hero. That is not really that great. Generally by turn 4, you're probably not hurting for health. And 3/6, while good, the condition is not that impactful usually. So it's probably an average card, maybe slightly above average, just because the stat line works well with Priest Hero Power. The 6 health works really well, but the 3 attacks is actually pretty bad for turn 4. So we're gonna say it's probably a 5, maybe a 5.5 out of 10. The ability, while good, is a bit limiting, just because you don't want to cast spells for the heck of casting spells just to gain 3 health. So if we ignore this 3/6 for 4, yeah, it's okay. It's average, probably a 5, right? And we get to the bad apple of this whole set, Purify. I really don't understand what people are doing when they make this kind of card for Priest. I feel bad for Priest getting this card, getting an offering bonus too. 2 mana, silence a friendly minion, draw a card. So like I said, like probably 2 mana to cycle a card with an effect. Is this effect worth it? Silence a friendly minion. Why would it have the word friendly on it? Even if it didn't have the word friendly on it, this card still is bad. Yeah, I don't understand what they're thinking. This is a troll card. It's really bad. It's probably the worst card in the set. One of the worst cards in the set. So it's a bit unfortunate it lands on the worst class in Arena too. Next class we're going to talk about is Rogue. Ethereal Peddler, insane card. 5/6 for 5, very good stat lines. Pit Fighter stat lines, so it's at least as good as Pit Fighter. It has a battle cry that has basically no condition to meet, and it can only bring you good. So although this battle cry probably won't go off very often because you have to have cards from other classes, so you have to have already pre-used cards like Burgle, Huckster, stuff like that. It really has no drawback. So at the very least, you're playing a 5/6 for 5, which is perfectly good. It is a rare, so you probably won't see it too often, and there probably are maybe some rare. There are some rares that are better than this. So, but on average, this card is really good. It's another card that is good for Mage. Oh, sorry, good for Rogue. So, yeah. Deadly Fork. 3 mana, 3/2. Death Rattle, add a 3/2 weapon to your hand. I believe the weapon that you get costs 3 mana. So you're basically getting a poison daggered dagger from this card. So 3/2 is pretty bad for 3 mana. It has the ability, it has the chance to trade up into a 3-drop, but no guarantee. You do get a poison dagger afterwards, which is actually decent value. So I consider this card to be not too bad. Having a 1-off in your deck is not too bad. It's Death Rattle too, so there are some synergies with like Unearthed Raptor, stuff like that. Yeah, I'd give it at least a 5 as an average card. It potentially could be an above average card. I think this card is quite good. It's quite good. And it's for Rogue. Rogue doesn't really need another good card, so And the last card is Swashbuckler. 1 mana battle cry, add a random class card to your hand. You know what? This card's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. In a way, it's kind of better than the Huckster because you get the card immediately. You get a weaker body, but you basically pay 1, you get a random card, and you get a 1/1. Yeah, this card's pretty good. I would take this quite often, probably. It's at least a 6. It's above average card for me, maybe even a 7. We'll be seeing it a lot, and it costs 1. It's a good combo activator card, so yeah, it's good. We'll get some good cards this expansion, so yeah, good cards. Next class is Shaman. So we're going to talk about Wicked Witch Doctor here. 4 mana, 3/4. Whenever you cast a spell, summon a random basic totem. I believe the basic totem is going to be the totems that you generate from your hero power. So that's generally pretty bad. Casting a spell, most spells from Shaman are actually very powerful, and they actually have overloads. So you don't want to cast them willy-nilly. The stat line is pretty bad for a 4 mana card, and the effect that comes off is actually not very good if you're just getting basic totems. So it's definitely a below average card for me. It's probably like a 3 out of 10. Probably wouldn't take it very often if it's offered, unless it's up against complete garbage most of the time. Next card, Maelstrom Portal. I like this card. This card is a card that Shaman really needed, I think. A 1 damage AoE ping. Very reasonable casting too, and you get a 1 mana minion. So I think this card is very good. It's a rare, unfortunately, for Shaman. If it was a common, yeah, that's great. But it's a rare, so you probably won't see it too often, and it fits into a bunch of other really strong rares that Shaman has. So it's competing against other really strong rares like Lightning Storm, Feral Spirits, stuff like that. But in general, this is probably a really good card. I would give it at least a 6, probably a 7. I would take these in bunches if I could, I think. 1 damage AoE is not easy for Shaman to do, but this card takes care of it pretty nicely. Spirit Claws. Another thing that gets addressed for Shaman is that they lack ping. So having a slightly weaker Light's Justice with Spirit Claws is pretty good, considering that when you consider that Warrior got N'Zoth's first mate and they get this little hook that actually made the class much more consistent, allowing them to ping and finish off minions. So this one, Spirit Claws, is Shaman's version of their ping weapon. It gets +2 attack while you have spell damage. Not an easy condition to meet since most spell damage minions are bad, but you do have a 25% chance of getting the spell damage totem. So this thing could be freaking insane if you land a totem on turn 2 and then it becomes an upgrade Fiery War Axe. So this card is very good for a class, exactly what they need. At least a 7, probably an 8. Take these all the time. So we're on to the Warlock class. Karazhan. 5 mana, summon 3 minions. Summon a candle, a broom, and a teapot. 1/1/2/2 and a 3/3. To my understanding, there are no abilities, so it's basically 6/6 stats over 3 bodies for 5 mana. While reasonable, it's probably not something that Warlock really needs. Warlock doesn't really have too much problems flooding the board with small minions. Their minions are very high quality. So I'd say this card is probably average. It's decent if you get it and you need something on turn 5 to play. So I'd give it a 5 out of 10. Next card is Silverware Golem. 3/3 for 3 mana. If you discard this minion, summon it. Great tempo play if we had a way to discard this consistently. Probably don't really have a way to consistently discard this card. As a 3/3 for 3, it's still reasonable, but its upside is not very easy to meet. So it's probably just a below average card. It's a 3/3, right? It's still playable, but it's definitely not going to be. It's not going to be as crazy as it sounds. Like you get a free 3/3 minion, that's great, but it's not easy to meet this condition. I'll probably give it a 4 or a 5, just because it's still an average playable card. Malchazar's Imp. Okay, 1 mana, 1/3. Whenever you discard a card, draw a card. 1 mana cards for Warlock are generally average. most 1 mana cards for Warlock are generally average to below average, just right off the bat. 1-3 stats for 1 mana is pretty good. Yeah, pretty good stat line. Kill most 1 mana cards. Its upside is, again, it's a discard effect. It's not easy to meet, I think. I mean, if you play this on turn 1, and then you turn 2 you play the Librarian, where it's Battle Cry, you discard a card. I guess that works with this card, but generally you're probably just going to be playing this as a 1-3 for 1. I'd rate it, again, its stats are perfectly playable, so it's a playable card. It's probably a 4 or 5 for me. It's average to slightly below average. I'd much rather have something else with some kind of ability than just 1-3 stats, but it's still definitely playable. And our last class will be Warrior. Fool's Bane, 5 mana weapon, 3/4. Unlimited attacks each turn, can't attack heroes. So now Warrior has a weapon. You can attack 4 times with it the turn that it's played and do 3 mana to minions only. So let's see. So you could do 12 damage spread out over 4 targets. It's decent. It's good control tool, so you use it to clean up the small minions. It's hard to evaluate because if you attack twice into a 6/6 ogre, for example, you're taking 12 damage, and that's a lot of damage, even for Warrior to take on turn 5. So I would rate this slightly below average, just because its uses is kind of limited. It's kind of like a Gorehowl reversed. It's a reverse Gorehowl. It's really good. It's a good catch-up card. I want to say that. It's a good catch-up card. It's a good catch-up card. It does cost 5, but it's a good catch-up card. If you have no way to get rid of something, this card gets rid of it, cleans the board, you can develop behind it. But in terms of Warrior weapons, I don't think it's as strong definitely not as strong as a lot of the other common ones. I'd probably take Arcanite Reaper over this card. But I think it's probably average, maybe slightly below or above. It's hard to evaluate. I'd probably give it a 5 for now, and then I think it's slightly above average, just because it can help clean up some smaller minions. So I'm going to give it a 5 for now, but it'll probably go up. It's probably going to be a 6 at least, so it's going to be a slightly above average card. So that's not bad. It's a weapon. Weapons are good in Arena, so definitely take this. Ironforge Portal. So another portal. This one goes to Warrior. 5 mana, gain 4 armor, summon a random 4-cost minion. I think this card's pretty bad. Gain 4 armor basically is kind of not that great. Summon a 4-cost minion for 5 mana and gain 4 armor is pretty bad. I would say random 4-cost minion is probably a 4/4, so you're getting a 4/4 and 4 armor for 5 mana, which is very average to very bad, because there's the downside of drawing a really bad 4-cost minion and gaining 4 armor. So yeah, I consider this card pretty below average. This is probably the worst portal offered, so I'd probably give this a 3. It's playable because actually it's borderline not even playable. It's okay. The 4 armors doesn't interact with the board, right? And you're getting a random 4-cost minion. Like, what if you get you know, I don't know, you're getting some junk, getting anything, getting what is a really junky 4-cost card? I mean, anyways, the average stat line is probably 4/4 for a 4-cost minion. So yeah, you're getting 4 armor and a 4/4 for 5. Like, if they made a card like that, you'd never play it. It's below average. So this card's definitely below average, probably 3. Protect the King. So this is Warrior's version of Unleash the Hounds. It's obviously worse because these 1/1 taunts don't have immediate effect. Not like Unleash the Hounds, which you can charge in, clear stuff, go face, etc. It's a rare, so we won't see it too often, but I consider this card pretty poor. It's below average for me. 1/1 with taunts generally get chewed through pretty quickly. It'll probably stall you out 1 turn. It does have the ability to give you some value. So if it lands on 3 minions, so you get 3 1/1 taunts, it's pretty good value. 3 taunts over 3 minions, decent, right? But it's a bit of a reactive card, probably not very good in Arena. definitely rate below average. So it's a 3 out of 5, 3 out of 10 for me. So Warrior didn't get much help this expansion. Hey guys, so I just want to do a quick recap of what we just went through for the class cards. We're not going to include the neutral cards just because they apply to all classes, but we're going to talk about specifically the class cards and how they stack up against each other in Arena. So the first class we're going to talk about is Druid. So they picked up the Enchanted Raven, the Menaguri Warden, and the Moonglade Portal. All three of these cards are very good. The Warden specifically is very, very good. The 5/5 that summons a beast if you control one, that's really good. But the Raven is good, and the Portal is very good. So Druid gets a huge boost this expansion. So the next class we're going to talk about is Hunter. Hunter also got 3 very good cards. Maybe not enough to make Hunter exceptionally better, but it's definitely going to help the class. Just getting some solid class cards with the offering bonus from the new adventure. So we might see a little rise of Hunter in the arena. So watch out for that. They got the Kindly Grandmother, the Cloaked Huntress, and the Catrick. Nice new secret. The Grandmother is a nice aggressive 2-drop with Death Rattle. The Cloaked Huntress is a nice secret synergy card, good stats, so, and a huge upside. Really nothing wrong with the cards that the Hunter got, so good for them. They got some good cards. The next class we're going to talk about is Mage. Mage got some ridiculous cards, borderline best in, probably the best, some of the best in this whole set. Firelands Portal, absolutely insane. Maybe the best card in the whole set. I have it listed as the best card in the whole set in terms of class cards. Medivh's Valet, the 2/3 for 2 that has a conditional fire elemental ability. If the ability goes off, it's insane. It's basically a Forgotten Torch wrapped into a 2-drop body. It's awesome. Raving Grimir is basically just a 1 mana draw card, and it leaves a 1/1. Very strong. Gets a random spell from the class. It's just like Cabal's Tomb, but just slightly less value because the card is not as expensive, but still a very good card. So Mage got some awesome cards. Firelands Portal gets a 9, Valley gets a 7, the Raving Book gets 6.5. All very good. Average would be a 5, but all above average cards so far. So Druid, Hunter, Mage all got very above average ratings so far on all the cards that they got. We're going to start getting back down to earth here with some of these other classes. So this is just my own opinion, so hopefully you guys have your own opinions, and maybe you guys agree or disagree, but yeah, let me know. Paladin, Nightbane Templar, the 3-cost 2/3 that summons 2/1/1 Dragon Whelps if you control a dragon. The likelihood of this thing going off, pretty unlikely, so it's going to be a 2/3 for 3 most of the time. It's a common card. It's going to hurt Paladin. It's definitely below average cards. I give it a 3. Silver Moon Portal, the buff with the random 2-cost minion attached to it, the portal. I think it's below average. It's decent value because it's a buff and a minion together, but it's generally below average. So I'm going to rate it at a 4.5. It could find some value. Slightly below average, so for me. Ivory Knight, the rare card that they got, 6 mana, 4/4, discover a spell, heal for that spell's amount. It's good. Discover a spell is always good. Paladin spell is not as good. The heal is okay as well, but it does give away the strength of your secret. It does give away the strength of the spell that you just picked up, so that's a bit of a bad thing. 4/4 stats, not very good for 6 mana, so at best it's about an average card. So Paladin didn't get much help this expansion. Priest of the Feast, 3/6 for 4, good stats I guess. It has an ability that doesn't really interact with anything. You cast a spell, you heal yourself for 3. I'd say it's an average card. It's not really something that Priest needs, but it's a good sized body. The body interacts well with their hero power, so you can just heal it over and over again. I give it a 5. Onyx Bishop, 3/4 body for 5. It has basically a resurrect spell attached to it, so you resummon a minion that died. That's the battle cry. It has a really good effect. It could be game breaking, could not be. So this card is actually above average for Priest, so it's actually a pretty good card. So I put it at 6.5. But it's offset by Purify, which is absolute garbage tier. It's complete trash. It's 2 mana, draw a card, silence a friendly minion. I don't know what they're thinking about that. It could be silence any minion and it'll still be terrible. So I have no idea what they're thinking about. I'm gonna give it a 0 and never see play. Never take it. If you take it, you should be angry at yourself. So Priest and Gala help. They're probably gonna still be in the gutter class. That's a little unfortunate, but yeah. We'll go to Rogue, King of the Hill. Previous expansions. Is it still going to be King of the Hill after this expansion? Swashbuckler, very good card. It's a 1-drop, good for activating combos, gives you card advantage, leaves a 1/1 body. Very reasonable. Deadly Fork, a little bit okay. I think it's better than it looks. It does give you a weapon, so it does get you some value. The body is a bit weak for its mana cost, but the weapon that it gives you is a 3/2. It's basically a Fire War Axe, but I think it costs 3 mana. So it's about average. It's okay. I put it at a 5. The rare card that we got, Ethereal Peddler, 5/6 for 5, good mana stats. Has a battle cry that's only going to give us an upside if we have random class cards in our hand, which is probably not likely, but it's still at least an above average card just based on the stats alone. So Rogue did okay. Swashbuckler looks interesting, but nothing too overly crazy for a Rogue. Shaman got some good tools. Not Wicked Witch Doctor though, which is very bad. It's a 3/4 for 4. You summon a spell, it gives you a basic totem. So I assume the basic totem means the 4 totems that you can generate from Shaman, which are not that impactful. Plus you have to spend spells to cast them, which is not that good. 3/4 stats are bad for 4 mana, so it's definitely a pretty bad card. I give it a 3 out of 10. Spirit Claw is ridiculous card for Shaman. It actually needs something like this. It's at least a 7.5, so it's definitely above average to excellent card. The upside of it is insane if you can somehow get the plus spell damage buff on it, but even not, it's just a 1 damage ping for a weapon. So it's really something that Shaman needs, a ping, and looks like Blizzard addressed it for Shaman. Next portal for Shaman, another 1 damage ping. So this time in AoE form, excellent. This is perfect, exactly what Shaman needs. We're going to be seeing a lot of these ping cards for Shaman, so no longer can we feel safe with 1 HP against Shaman. So these cards definitely address the issues for Shaman, and will probably make Shaman a pretty good class going forward in Arena. So they got some help. Warlock, I think they didn't do that great this expansion, but they didn't do poorly. Like the Imp of Matrixar, like it's a 1/3 for 1s, and it has an upside where you discard a card, you draw a card. But we really don't want to discard too many cards in the early beginning. So this has a 1-drop. Maybe you can play it in combination with a card that does discard your cards. Then that kind of makes sense. But it's basically a 1/3 for 1, which 1-drops are highly valued in Warlock. So it's average with an upside. So it's a perfectly fine card. Karazhan, you basically get 6/6 stats over 3 bodies, much like Force of Nature. Force of Nature is kind of an average card. In Warlock though, this card is kind of not really needed since Warlock has all sorts of small minions to flood the board with. I mean, if your deck is lacking that zoo nature, you know, you can take Karazhan and that'll be your turn 5 play. You get 3 bodies. It's okay. It's okay. It's an okay card. So I give it a 5 as an average card. Silver Golem, I think it's 3/3 for 3, even with no any ability is okay. It's still semi-playable, semi-pickable. It's below average, but it's alright. It does have an upside. If it gets discarded, it gets played for free. Likelihood of it getting discarded is pretty low, so it's generally a 3/3 for 3, which is kind of like uninteresting. So I give it a 4, slightly below average. It does have some upside, which actually is okay. Warrior, Fool's Bane, I gave it a slightly above average rating just because I'm not really sure how it will interact, because it's really good at controlling small minions, but as soon as you start getting into a larger minion, its value is not worth anything anymore. But for 5 mana, there's not a lot of weapons that you can get, only Arcanite Reaper, so I think I still take Arcanite Reaper over Fool's Bane just because you have the flexibility of going face. But Fool's Bane is a decent aggro control card for Arena, and it's a weapon. Weapons are great, so still above average. It probably would be higher, I think. Ironforge Portal, I think this is one of the worser portals. 4 armor doesn't interact with anything, so you're paying 5 mana for a 4 mana minion that is going to be random. So it could be from really good to really horrible. and the 4 armor that you get probably won't save you if it's really horrible. So it's generally a below average, maybe even a very below average card. I don't like it, and it's not really going to help Warrior that much. So the last card in the class analysis here, we're just going to talk about Protect the King for Warrior. Basically, Warrior's Unleash the Hounds variant, but is not as good as Unleash the Hounds. Just because Unleash the Hounds have charge, they can go in for face, they can kill stuff, blah blah, you can interact with them. Protect the King, you play it. The only interaction you have is probably Bolster. So now Bolster is a thing, I guess, but generally as a reactive card, you need stuff on the board, you play them, they just stand there, they get killed next turn. So you could get some value, but your value will be only as high as how badly behind you are on the board. So I think it's slightly below average card. I don't think I would pick it too often. So okay guys, so to sum it up, we're going to talk about my projected rankings here. I'm going to say that Mage overtakes Rogue as the best class in Arena, just because they've gotten such awesome cards and they're already such an awesome class. It's really going to be hard for Rogue to keep up with Mage. I think they're still 1-2, but just the offering bonus on these cards make Mage a slight. It's already questionable whether Mage and Rogue are 1-2, which one's better, but I think this expansion will push Mage over the top, and we'll see Mage being the best class in Arena, followed by Rogue. It's a bit unfortunate since we already see the highest frequency in Mage. It's going to be kind of boring, kind of stale if we just see Mages from now on. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. Rogue's still very strong, obviously. They didn't get any really bad cards. They got some decent cards. So Rogue's still going to be good, top tier class. We see a huge jump from Druid, just because they got 3 very insane, very above average cards. Definitely going to help the class out. So good for them. They have good hero power. They got ping hero power, decent class cards, decent amount of removal. They also get a help from the neutral destroy minion. So maybe that'll help them out against larger minions. We'll see. But my projection is that they go back up to 3rd. They've always been a very consistent and good class. Just had a big dip since Whispers of the Old Gods, but we'll probably see them come back this expansion. We see Warlock. Warlock's still there just because the strength of their hero power is obviously always good. They have good foundational cards, and it's very easy to draft a good Warlock deck. You just need small minions. So even though they didn't get much help this expansion with the minions that are offered, it's not really necessary. We see a big drop from Paladin. They didn't get any help this expansion. The cards they got are actually not that great and are not cards that you want to take very often. So their strength still lies in their classic cards. Classic cards are insanely powerful, and so they have good foundational cards. It will keep them in the hunt, but we see them drop down in power level a little bit. I put them in this. I think these 3, Paladin, Shaman, Warrior, are very interchangeable. It really depends on the draft, but I think Shaman and Warrior, Shaman definitely got a bit of help, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to propel them into, like, you know, the tier B, basically into the B area. I think them and Warrior are very similar, and they need very specific drafts to be good, whereas Warlock and Druid can be a little bit more flexible. Paladin also needs very specific cards to be very good. So it's hard. I think all 5 of these classes are kind of interchangeable, but this is just my rough estimate here. For me personally, I like Warrior a bit, but I think this expansion hurts them. They don't get anything that's really of any substance or any good. Shaman gets the best cards available to them, so we could probably see them jump up a little bit, but I'm hesitant to say, and I want to put them right here, right under Paladin for now. Hunter gets a boost. All 3 of their offerings are very good, very solid cards. Is it enough? Maybe not. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be enough. But yeah, poor Hunter, right? And we have Lowly Priest at they're not even a class anymore. It's incredibly difficult to draft a good priest deck and go far with it. They don't get any help. They got 2 average to above average minions, and then they got a horrible spell that you'll probably see very often. So it's pretty rough times for Priest. Hopefully they get it right on the next expansion, which will be at least 6 months away. So that sums up our arena class analysis here. Alright guys, that's it. That's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed that full set adventure review of One Night in Karazhan. We're strictly talking about Arena, so you might have some differing opinions, but please consider that we're just talking about these cards and how they'll work in Arena. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. This is my first video where I'm actually doing specific commentary off my stream. If you guys like the video, please let me know. If you guys don't like the video, let me know. There's a comment field below. If you guys agree or disagree, again, please let me know. I appreciate all sorts of feedback. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate this. You guys have a good one. Take care.